The Man with the Yin-Yang Eyes. Season 3, Episode 23. In the process of fleeing the pursuit of the snake tribe, we accidentally came to their sacred land, where there are orchids used to break the scary curse. It was here that we encountered the fearsome gatekeeper of the snake tribe. It is a giant snake. It is clear that this snake has lived a long time and rarely moves. The evidence is that each layer of moss is still clinging to its body. Tired of being chased by snakes, I decided to stay and fight the snake this time. Because getting to this place isn't easy, if I run away now, I do not know how far I will be chased by this snake. At that time, whether to return to this place or not was still a tricky question to answer. Beside me, Big D also seemed to understand my thoughts. He asked if I had any plans. Indeed, until now, I have no plans at all, because with my yin-yang eyes, I discovered that this snake is entirely different from the snakes we have faced up to now. On the snake's head, I saw a human soul. It is not difficult to guess that the people of the snake tribe sealed the soul of the person into the body of the snake. It is this soul that actually controls the body of the snake. I also guess that this is what makes this snake so large and live so long. After telling Big D what he saw, he was just like me at first, in that he was pretty surprised by this. Although the opponent this time was extremely dangerous, I had basically grasped the crux of the matter. Defeating this type of opponent is not difficult. Just expel the soul of the manipulator, the snake will automatically be defeated. The problem now is that I need some time to prepare some things. After putting everything together in my head, I turned to Big D to tell him my plan. It's time to move on. Now you will lure the snake into the forest so that I can prepare a formation to banish the controller's soul. Knowing that I would suggest the same, Big D immediately replied, "Hey, are you overestimating me? I might lose my life by playing with this snake before you get everything ready." Despite saying that out loud, but more than anyone else, Big D understands that at this moment, this is the only way possible. So, without hesitation, Big D raised his gun and fired consecutively at the snake. He shot and reminded me to finish everything soon because he wouldn't be able to hold out for long with this gun. Previous encounters with snakes have proven that the bullets from the pistol have absolutely no effect on these snakes. Right now, Big D just wishes he had a 50 cal gun. Then he will not hesitate to give the snake in front of him a whole box of ammo. ABC. Soon he was driving the snake crazy, which stopped paying attention to me and was focused entirely on Big D. Like that, Big D lured the snake away from the tree. When the snake started to accelerate, it was also when Big D ran away. I took advantage of this rare time and immediately took out the talismans and placed them on the ground. Thinking that everything could go smoothly as planned, I no longer paid much attention to my surroundings. Until a horrible fishy smell hit my nose and the continuous noises behind my back caught my attention. When I turned around, I couldn't help but be startled by a blood-red mouth and sharp teeth coming towards me. It took almost 2 seconds for me to realize what was in front of me. I immediately jumped to the side, barely dodging the deadly bite from the snake. Unable to hold back, I yelled, "Damn fat, what the hell are you doing? I told you to lure the snake away from me, but I didn't say you led it towards me." At this time, Big D was still running around in the forest until he heard my scream. He turned his head in surprise. When he looked behind him and did not see the snake anymore, Big D was also quite surprised with this result. Only now did he know that while he was running away, the snake had turned its target on me without his knowledge. Just like Big D, I don't quite understand what's going on either. Apparently, the snake chased Big D into the forest. Why is it appearing in my place now? Starting to look around, I suddenly realized that the main problem was in the old tree trunk behind me. Maybe the reason is that the snake is the guard animal, so it won't be able to get too far from this tree. To confirm my guess, I started to lure the snake to follow me. There were a few times when I tried to lure it into the forest, but only about 50 meters from the tree, the snake stopped again. It stopped chasing me and went back near the tree. I started to develop a plan. I immediately called Big D to come close to me. Deliberately following the zigzag path to hinder the snake's pursuit, I took the opportunity to climb up the old tree trunk. Since the entire trunk is full of orchids, climbing is also easier. While moving, I deliberately picked some orchids on the trunk. This seemed to make the snake even angrier. It immediately opened its mouth wide and rushed towards me. From the moment I held the orchids in my hand, the snake chased me more frantically, confirming my thoughts. I used the vines on the old tree to move, and at the same time, I called Big D and threw the orchids in my hand at him. Indeed, this snake only chases orchids, and those who want to come close to snatch these orchids only. As soon as I threw out the orchids in my hand, the snake immediately opened its mouth as if it wanted to grab the orchids flying in the air. But the action of the snake was a step behind. When it closed its mouth, Big D caught a bunch of orchids that I threw. Immediately, the snake ignored me and focused all of its attention on Big D. Everything then turned out exactly as I had predicted. The snake now immediately considers Big D as the only target of pursuit. Without hesitating for another second, I immediately took out the charms to get to work. The method that I am working on is to open a portal connecting the earthly to the underworld. Although I've seen my master use this method a few times, I've never used it myself. Every time I want to send a soul to the underworld, I use a small clay pot. Since I didn't know if I could succeed with this method, I acted with extreme caution. My failure now will cost Big D's life, and next will be me. Although this method is quite a time-consuming to prepare, but it has the advantage of being able to send many souls to the underworld at the same time, instead of just sending a soul like my usual method of using earthen pots. Another advantage is that I can go anywhere with just a bunch of charms instead of carrying a clay pot with me. After arranging the talismans neatly, I looked them over again to ensure I had done the correct method. Next, I pulled out a peach wooden sword. Here's another Big D creation, a retractable sword. Thanks to this, I could keep the sword in my body and still walk freely in the forest. After pressing a small button on the hilt, the sword immediately lengthened. I raised the blade to my face and started mumbling incantations. After reading the last chant, I let out a scream and thrust the sword in my hand into the center of the circle. This moment for me is really thrilling. Success or failure can only be done once, there is no chance to try again. And not beyond what I expected. The ground at the tip of the sword began to change. Soon a hole appeared. Around the crater, black smoke continuously emanated. That proves I have succeeded in opening the way to the underworld. As time went on, the crater was widened. Accordingly, the black smoke also emitted denser and denser. From within the crater came continuous groans and screams. But the strange thing was that the sounds did not seem to belong to a single language. Through this, I suddenly realized that, despite being in different places, in the end, people all returned to the same site. As soon as the gate was opened, it attracted the attention of the spirits around the tree trunk. These people were brought here for one reason or another to be sacrificed. After they die, their souls are imprisoned here, unable to escape. So this is the only chance for these souls to escape from this place. As more and more souls approached the crater, their speed also increased. It seems that these souls also know that this door's time is short, and soon it will be closed. At first, when I saw the skeletons lying under the tree, I thought only a few dozen people had ever been sacrificed here. But at this point, I had to think again. Since the gate was opened, hundreds of souls have passed through it to the underworld. Perhaps this sacrifice took place a long time ago. Many skeletons have ceased to exist over the years. The only thing left is their souls trapped here. The time to maintain the gate is finally over. Fortunately, all the souls here have reached their destination. The talismans lined up around the crater immediately burst into flames. After a small explosion, the ground returned to normal as if nothing had happened. The only thing left is the ashes of the talismans, slowly dissolving in the wind.